What's up guys, I'm Belamy Prime and today we're going to be doing part 2 of our melee guide videos. This will be another baseline video and we're going to be discussing the different weapon types and the different base attack speeds for all melee weapons, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll be able to decide on which kind of melee weapon you want to choose to build around for your playstyle. So let's just jump right in. And we're gonna start out by talking about the weapon types that every melee weapon has. Now we can put these into 3 categories, and we'll show these up on screen for you right now. These are slashing, piercing, and crushing. So first we'll talk about the we're going to talk about the differences between each of those types, and we're going to tell you which weapons fall into which categories. Now, the first and foremost one we're going to talk about is a slashing type. Now, if you look over here, we'll put a we'll put a leather set buff up on screen so you can see where this information is coming from. But you can see that we receive an extra 15% damage from slashing attacks. So any weapon that has a slashing type will be doing an extra 15% damage to that armor, so leather armor, right? Now, it's important to keep in mind that this is not a constant 15% bonus to all your attacks. This is a chance for it to proc. So if I'm hitting someone and I hit them 10 times, I may hit them 2 or 3 times in those 10 times with an extra 15% damage. And it shows up in the combat log. We'll display this, we'll demonstrate this later on in the video. But just keep in mind that it's not a persistent 15% bonus damage. It's just a chance for you to proc an extra 15% bonus damage on any of your attacks. Obviously with no cooldown, but just keep that in mind. So the second one we're going to talk about is piercing. Piercing is the exact same as slashing, but instead of a 15% bonus to leather, it's a 15% bonus to plate. So we'll throw up the plate buff here on screen. And you can see that it receives an extra 15% damage from piercing type weapons. So if you're hitting someone in plate with a piercing weapon, each of your attacks has a 20 to 25% chance, somewhere around there, of it piercing and doing extra damage. And you can see, if you're already reading ahead on the plate buff, you can see that the third type, crushing, does an extra 20% damage to plate users. So it's the same thing as piercing in every single way, has the same proc chance, it just does an extra 5% damage. There's no real reason why this is a thing, why it does an extra 5%, but it's there and you should know about it. So these are our 3 types. We have slashing, piercing, crushing. Pretty simple, right? 15% bonus to leather, 15% bonus to plate, 20% bonus to plate. Now, we're gonna show you which weapon fits into which category, and we'll start off with the slashing weapons. So we have 3 slashing weapons. Those are dagger, then katana, and then in the 2-hand range we have nodachi. So these are our three weapon types that fit into slashing. These are all going to net you an extra 15% damage to leather if you proc it during a fight. All really nice, super good for taking down those squishies that you want to be killing fast, really quick in raids, because they're more than likely going to be a dangerous player. Right, so good weapons all around, very nice. Now the next type is piercing. The piercing types, we'll start at the one-handed side here. So the first piercing weapon is sword, and then we have short spear, both piercing. And then on the 2-handed side, we have their equivalents, greatsword and long spear. So these are our 4 piercing weapons, which all give us a 15% bonus proc chance against plate wearers. And the third and final weapon type, crushing, is limited to axe and then great axe in the 2-handed side. So these will net you a proc chance at getting an extra 20% damage against plate wearers. So I know some of you might be thinking, yes, there are more than just great axe and axe in the crushing type. There is club, great club, and staff and scepter, which are all crushing type weapons. If you want to play some sort of mage melee hybrid or melee healer hybrid, then these are options for you. I wouldn't recommend it because, playing any kind of hybrid class in ArcheAge normally means you end up being way weaker in both sides instead of being powerful in one or the other. Like instead of being a powerful mage or a powerful melee, you'll just end up being an awkward, weak mage that also can do melee attacks, which are also kind of weak. And it just kind of, in most cases, you kind of just have to choose to do one or the other, especially if we're talking about, especially if we're trying to focus on DPS classes specifically. Obviously, if you want to play some kind of paladin tank self-healing class, then a club or a great club is probably a really good way to go. But for this video, we're just going to be talking about pure melee DPS weapons for the DPS style class players or the tank DPS hybrids, right? So those are our three weapon types: slashing, piercing, crushing. All great, no matter which weapon you choose. It just really depends on your playstyle. So if you want to be taking out squishies, people in leather and like archers and high DPS melees, then you're going to want to take a slashing weapon to give yourself that extra chance at taking them out extra fast. Or if you find yourself fighting a lot more plate players and this is super frustrating for you, then you might find yourself leaning more towards a piercing weapon or a crushing weapon to get the bonus damage against them, which is fine. All weapons are fine. It's not like you're going to take a piercing weapon and then feel like you do no damage against someone in leather. You'll still be perfectly fine. I personally like to stick towards the slashing weapons just because I prefer to be able to pop the scary people in a group situation faster. I feel like having the extra chance at damage against like a really like a flame dark runner or a speedy little archer that's gonna pop me if I don't kill them fast makes more sense to me. So that's what I kind of gravitate towards. Alright, so before we get into the second half of the video, I just want to quickly show you guys the combat logs for your three different damage types, the slashing, piercing, and crushing. So the first one we'll be showing is the bonus to leather from slashing weapons. As you can see here in the combat log, we're using bad weapons here, but we're getting an extra 35, 36 additional cut damage. We can see it popping there. We got quite nice procs here. Nice proc chance. The next one we'll show is the piercing weapon. So we're using a sword here against a plate wearer. It's not a very good sword, so we're not going to be seeing much damage, so don't get caught up on that too much. But as we can see in the combat log here, we're getting an additional thrust damage every so often. Doesn't proc every single time. Seems to be about 50%. And then the final one, we are using an axe just to show the additional bash damage from axes and crushing weapons. So if we look in the combat log here, we can see that we have bash additional damage. It's only 10, but it's because we're doing no damage. So yep, just keep that in mind. That's where you find that if you're looking to test your damage and see what kind of procs you get. So the second part of this video, the thing that we want to discuss between all the weapon types, is their base attack speed. So you'll notice looking at any weapon that they have an attack speed rating which ranges between 0.8 and 1.3. So the easiest way to interpret this is to look at a weapon with an attack speed of 1.0. Now, the easiest way to visualize this is to say, alright, a weapon with an attack speed of 1.0 has 100% attack speed and 100% damage. And any 0.1 above or below that is a 10% increase or reduction to attack speed and damage. And I'll explain further. So if we're comparing a sword, actually no, look, let's do this because we have two examples here. If we're comparing a greatsword, which is an attack speed of 1.1, against a long spear, which has an attack speed of 1.2, we should expect the Hiram long spear to have 120% damage on the base, but also be 20% slower as opposed to something with, you know, a 1.0 attack speed, right? And then, of course, a weapon with a 1.1 attack speed, so this greatsword is going to have a 10% bonus, but it's going to be slightly faster than the long spear. So what the difference between these two is a 10% difference. The long spear is going to have 10% more damage, but it's going to be 10% slower. So it's difficult to demonstrate the speed difference here just because I have bad ping, and it's kind of difficult to time and to see the attack speed difference. But you will feel it using the two different weapons when you're trying to combo and things like that. So we're just going to talk about the damage here, right? As we can see from the greatsword here, we're getting between about 695 to about 700 damage on a rapid strike, right? So we'll just round out and say 700 damage. So we're getting 700 damage on a greatsword, which is 1.1. Now when we switch over here to our long spear, it has 10% more damage while also being 10% slower. So although it will feel slower, it should have 10% more damage. So we should see around about 770 damage on our rapid strike. So let's go ahead and switch. And we're going to keep hitting here. And we can see that we're hitting about 755 to about 700 and I saw 769 at one point. Yeah, 769. So yeah, pretty much exactly 10% more damage. And just for reference, these two weapons are exactly the same. They're both Hiram T1s at Grand. They have the same DPS. They have Spirit and Intelligence, which neither affect your melee damage. One has attack speed, one has melee crit rate, which don't affect the flat damage either. And then they both have melee crit damage, so they're equal in every way for their damage output, just their flat damage numbers that they're going to be providing here. So we can see that, yes, it has a 10% more damage on the long spear. We can see that very clearly here. So that's the easiest way to see this. So if you're seeing a weapon with a 1.0 attack speed and a weapon with a 1.1, then the 1.1 is going to have 10% more bonus on the 1.0. Simple as that, right? So we'll get back into this, and we're going to delve into the 4 different attack speeds, and we're going to categorize these for you guys. So we'll start off with the fastest and the lowest hitting weapon first, which is the dagger. Now, a dagger has an attack speed of 0.8. So if we're using 1.0 as our baseline, it has 20% less overall damage multiplier, but it's going to be much faster. So if we're using a dagger as a main hand, you know, you might not seem much faster here because I have really bad ping and my rapid strikes are much slower. But if you're doing like a full combo and, you know, trying to kill someone with skills and things like that, it's going to feel noticeably faster, like much, much, much faster for you because your base attack speed is lower. And then obviously you're dual wield, so it's gonna feel faster because of that as well. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, dagger is going to be a 0.8 attack speed, and it's going to feel pretty good. It's going to feel super fast, but of course your damage is going to take a slight hit. I would recommend using a dagger if you want to focus more on 1 versus 1s. You will combo much faster than your opponent who doesn't have a dagger, and you will use your skills much faster, and your global cooldowns are quicker, and it's fast and flashy and fun. But obviously in some situations where someone's a bit tankier, they might just straight up tank your damage and tank your full combo, or, you know, in world PvP, you just might not have the damage to be able to take down like a really good healer, or, you know, someone who's not got, you know, 25k or less HP and, you know, not a lot of defense kind of thing. So dagger, to sum it up, super fast but lacking in damage. Still a good choice, so keep that there in the back of your mind. Now, the next attack speed is, we skip straight up to the flat 1.0, and this includes swords and katanas. are the two that go into this category. Now, pretty self-explanatory. They're just going to have the flat 100% damage, no reductions or anything like that. But they're still not on the high end of the damage attack speeds, but they feel nice and fast, not too much slower than a dagger. They're a good medium for players who want to be able to still hit hard, but also want to be nice and fast for duels and nice and fast for like gladiator arenas, and being able to zip into, you know, a group of reds, maybe pop one person and then get out nice and fast and wait for your things to come off cooldown kind of deal. This is the kind of weapon for you. It's super fast, super reliable, and I really enjoy playing with a katana as my main hand. It's a fun play style, and I can tell you that the damage is most definitely there. So the next base attack speed we're going to talk about is 1.1 attack speed. Now this includes weapons from both one-hander and two-hander. We'll talk about the one-handers first. So we get short spear and we get axe. So now these weapons are slightly slower than our sword katana friends over here, but obviously they have a 10% bonus increase. So if I was to have, you know, one of these weapons, like a short spear here and a katana, same grade, same stats, then I would be getting 10% more damage just flat in general with the short spear as opposed to a katana. Okay, so the damage is going to be more in every single case, obviously, but obviously they're going to feel slightly slower. It's not super noticeable in my opinion, like the short spear as opposed to a katana. It's slower, yes, not hugely, and it's not going to hinder you in any way. If you would rather have that little bit of extra damage and you don't mind being super zippy, then go for it. Short spear or axe might be the way to go for you. Now, we'll move over into the two-hander here because we have two weapons here that are also 1.1, which are great swords and nodachis. Now, the two-hander equivalent of these are the fastest of the two-handers, being 1.1. Now, they are significantly faster than the third speed we're going to talk about later, which is 1.2. I really can tell the difference with two-hander just because you don't have the dual wield buff to boost your attack speed so much. It really, I can feel the difference. So me personally, I am absolutely fine with playing with a Nadachi or a greatsword. They feel fast enough for my playstyle and for my ping. But if I'm trying to use a long spear, the attack speed's just not there for me. I feel like I'm too slow and too laggy, and it takes me too long to get off all my skills and then get out of a bad situation. They're still very powerful. Obviously, the great axe and the long spear, but to me, Nodachi, even with the reduced damage, feels like the better weapon, just because, you know, obviously as a two-hander you're gonna be lacking a bit of attack speed as opposed to dual wield. So it's a nice middle ground, you could say. But of course, we've already talked about it. The fourth weapon attack speed type is 1.2. Now obviously these are going to be doing an extra 10% damage on the other two two-handed weapons we see here, so they hit significantly harder just because, you know, it's 10% more. And when you're getting up into like aerial weapons and things like that, and they're up in the high grades like legendary and above, 10% is really a significant number. Just because, you know, when you're getting like legendary aerial, you know, they have a really insanely high DPS, and more often than not, you got all the gear to back it up. So 10% is a big increase in damage, and you will notice it, but they are significantly slower. So I would recommend, before you go choose one of these weapons, is to just buy like a cheap one off the auction house, or just unseal like a tier 1 Hiram version, and just try it out, see how it feels, you know. Try and combo some mobs and just feel how fast and feel how slow it feels to you. And if you think you can handle it, then go ahead, because the DPS is there if you don't mind the slow attack speed. And I will point out that, you know, the great clubs and staves have an attack speed of
1.3. So obviously they're that even more slower than the great axes and the long spears, and they have an extra 10% bonus. But like we said earlier, they have, by default, they just have less DPS. So we'll point out again here, we have a great axe, 1093 DPS, whereas the great club has 9056. So, you know, it's like 140 DPS difference at the same grade, because they're not meant to be melee weapons. You can use them. You will take a hit to your DPS overall, despite the 10%. But yeah, we're going to leave those out for now. I just thought I'd point that out for those of you who weren't already aware. So yeah, those are the two important things that we need to discuss when choosing your choosing your weapon type and the attack speed that you want to go with. I'd recommend for people with higher ping to choose, if you want to go with a two-hander, definitely choose a greatsword or a Nodachi. Like, the attack speed won't be there for you otherwise, and you'll struggle to get your combos going. And if you really want to play safe, go with dual wield. You can get away with any dual wield setup, no matter the attack speed on the dual wield weapons. They'll feel perfectly fast for you. And, you know, the faster you go on the dual wield side of things, the better the game's going to feel for you as someone with higher ping. I can attest to that. And of course, if you're someone with really, really low ping, like if you have 40 or less ping, or even 60 or 50, then a great axe or a long spear, like any of these really slow weapons, is going to feel great for you. Like, you won't really have a problem comboing, and you won't really, you know, feel that slow compared to people with, you know, compared to the other weapons. Obviously, the other weapons will feel much faster, but if you have good ping, you can get away with these more slow weapons and get, you know, the huge DPS bonuses that they give. So if you got good ping, give one of these slow weapons a try. They'll feel, you know, once you get set up and you get nice attack speed gems and things like that, they'll feel amazing. You'll do so much damage, and you'll have a great time, and people will really be afraid of you if they see you coming up them with, you know, with them lit up. So I hope that this video was informative in some kind of way for all of you guys, whether you're thinking about a weapon switch and you've been playing for a long time, or if you're a new and returning player and you're not sure which kind of weapon to go with yet, and you're not really sure of the differences or anything like that. I hope this cleared up a few things and you kind of have an idea of which weapon you want to go with. And of course, you know, you don't have to think too much into it. You're going to do damage regardless of which weapon you choose. It's just that this is the things you need to know if you want to min-max your damage for a certain playstyle. But of course, at the end of the day, most people are just going to pick whichever weapon they think looks the coolest, which is what I do. So, you know, I'm not going to judge you. And, you know, if I see you run around with a fucking great club because you think it looks dope, bonking people on the head with that shit, then damn dog, go for it. You're gonna have a great time. And fuck, you can heal yourself at the same time. So shit, who am I to judge? Am I right? So, of course, don't get too stuck up on trying to get the most damage if you just want to look fucking cool. You're going to have damage regardless, no matter which weapon you choose. Anyone with, you know, you're fighting someone with a dagger in an arena, if they catch you, they're still going to kill your ass if they have enough damage and they have the rest of the gear to back up the weapon that they've chosen. And if you verse someone in fucking Glads with a great axe, yeah, they're going to be slightly slower, but shit, if they fucking get you, then they're going to bop you, boy. So you better, like, be careful of those people. So yeah, I hope this helped, and I will see you guys in the next Melee Guide video. Cheers.